Today in Algebra 1 we learned about parallel and perpendicular lines. The definition for parallel lines are ones that do not touch, they never intersect, and they have the same slope. For perpendicular lines, the definition is that they are two lines that meet at a 90-degree angle, and their slopes are what's called opposite reciprocal. Okay, if we start here, we want to create some lines. In this column we're going to create ones that are parallel, and this one we're going to create lines that are perpendicular. To do that, we're going to use the slope. So, in our given line, let's label what the slope is. In this case, it's m equals 4, because that's the number right in front of x. Remember our original formula, y equals mx plus b, for all linear functions, where m is the slope. So here, the slope is 4. On the next one, the slope is 1/2. This one, the slope is -2. Number 4, it would be -2/3. Number 5 would be 4. Number 6 would be 1/5. Number 7 would be -6. Number 8 would be -7/8. And number 9 would be 11/6. Now, to make parallel lines, I'm going to use those slopes, put it into the slope-intercept formula, and pick any number to be my b. The number on the end really doesn't matter. I can pick any number I want. So, for this one, I might do y equals 4x. The 4 is important because that's our slope. And I might say plus 1. On the next one, I'd say y equals 1/2 x, and then I could pick any other number. Let's just say -2. Notice it doesn't matter what number or what sign I pick for the b. I can do anything I want. So this next column, I'm going to go all the way down. I'm going to show you that every single one starts out as y equals m, which is our slope, so -2, -2/3, 4, 1/5, -6, -7/8, and 11/6, mx. And then it's plus b. It can also be minus b. So I'm just going to say plus 3, -4, -5, -6, plus 7, plus 8, plus 11. Why not? I can pick any number I want. It doesn't matter. The next thing we talked about in class was perpendicular lines, whose slopes are opposite reciprocal, meaning I flip the sign and I flip the fraction. So starting with number 1, the slope was 4. It's not a fraction, so that's hard to flip. To make it 1, I'm going to put 1 on the bottom. So I have 4/1. If I flip that, I'll get 1/4. So that's the opposite of 4/1, and I flip the sign so it's negative. The next one, if I have 1/2 and I flip it, I'm going to have -2/1. Again, I have a whole number. I've got to put 1 on the bottom. If I start with -2/1, my new slope will be positive 1/2. -2/3, positive 3/2. This one, positive 4/1, -1/4. This one, 1/5. Opposite reciprocal, -5/1. -6/1, positive 1/6. -7/8, positive 8/7. And positive 11/6 would become -6/11. Once I have my new slope, I can use those to make yet another line. In this case, my line is perpendicular to my original given and is also perpendicular to this one. So again, a line starts with y equals. So that I can do for all of them. Put my slope in, -1/4, -2/1, 1/2, 3/2, -1/4, -5/1, 1/6, 8/7, and -6/11. Mx. The x is important. Do not forget that. Mx and then plus or minus b. So I just choose anything I want. -6, -5, -2, -1, +1, +17, +21, -3, +4. Doesn't matter. I can pick anything I want to be that ending number. That's how we look at parallel and perpendicular lines. Let's look at some final thoughts. For parallel, the symbol is two slanted parallel lines. If I want to identify which pairs, A through D, are parallel to each other, I need to look at their slopes. Remember, slope's always in front of x. We just talked about that. So in this one, my slope is 4/3. And the next one, there's no x. The x went away, meaning my slope is 0. In part C, the slope is 4/3. And part D, the slope is 0. So there are obviously two pairs here. A is parallel to C, and that's how I write that. And B is parallel to D. Okay, circle this number 2 part. This is what your assignment will be like. What I want you to do is write an equation that passes through 4, 5, and is parallel to y equals 5x plus 10. Now, The parallel part we did a whole bunch of just a second ago. So let's start with what's the slope here. Well, m equals 5. It's right in front of x. Now, I'm done with this part of the equation. All I needed was to get the slope from it. Now I have a slope, and I want it to go through this point. So this is an x value, so x1 equals 4. This is a y value, y1 equals 5. And now I have a point and a slope, and if I use point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, then I can plug in what I have and solve. So I'm going to do y minus, and for y1 I'm going to put 5 equals 5 for slope times x minus 4. I'm going to solve for y. Distribute the 5. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. Add 5 to both sides. And I'll get y equals 5x. And negative 20 plus 5 is negative 15. And that is my final answer, where it's parallel to this one and goes through this point. The last thing we want to look at is perpendicular. The sign for that is this upside down T, which makes it two 90-degree angles. If I want to identify my pairs, the first one, part A, is an x equals line. Remember that an x equals line is undefined. Okay, that's its slope. A y equals line, the slope equals 0. This one, the slope would be negative 4, and the last one, the slope would be 1/2. Remember, an undefined line is up and down vertically. A horizontal line, or a slope equals 0, is horizontal. So A and B are perpendicular to each other. A is perpendicular to B. Negative 4, if I did the reciprocal, it'd be negative 4 over 1's reciprocal would be positive 1 over 4, which is not the same as this. So there is no relationship here, and there's nothing for us to write. The last number 2 is like the second part of your homework, and it says to write an equation that passes through 3, 2, and is perpendicular to y equals 3x minus 1. Pretty similar to the one we did just a minute ago, except instead of parallel, it's perpendicular. We'll start by figuring out what the slope is here, which is 3, or 3 over 1. For it to be perpendicular, we have to do the opposite reciprocal. So this one's positive, the new one will be negative. 3 over 1 is 1 over 3. And I don't need this or this, I'm done. I can say that my x1 and my y1 I get from my point. My x value would be 3. My y value would be 2. I plug that into the point-slope formula. Once I've plugged it in, I need to distribute. Negative 1/3 times x is negative 1/3 x. Negative 1/3 times negative 3 is positive 1. If you're stuck on fractions, especially multiplying fractions, please use your calculator. Be sure to use parentheses. Remember, to do a fraction, you just use the division sign, and that should really help. Finally, to get y by itself, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Y equals negative 1/3 x plus 3. And that's my final answer. Your homework for this was a worksheet, so you'll get that when you get back to class. If you have questions, let me know.